Okay, I'm back with another video, and this one is a lens review. Now, the company Viltrox has sent us a few lenses over the last year or so for our Nikon cameras and for Eric's Canon cameras, and we really like them. And the first two they sent for me were for my Nikon Z6 II full frame camera. The one I'm going to review today is for an APS-C camera, which is a crop sensor camera. So the sensor is actually smaller than a full frame camera. So this lens right here is a 75mm 1.2 aperture. Okay, so I tested this out on my Nikon Z6 II. When I put it on that camera, the lens becomes I think it's about a 112mm lens. So this is a really great portrait lens. And that's pretty much how I tested it out. I took some pictures of my kids, and I was on a camping trip, I used it. It is a great lens. I love this lens. This feels better than my Nikon lenses. It feels sturdier. It has an all metal body. The focus ring is super smooth. It has an aperture ring on it if you wanted to use that. So you can use your camera's electronic aperture settings. It's weather sealed. The filter thread is a 77mm filter thread, so it's a very common filter thread if you're going to use polarizers, ND filters, which I use a lot. And not necessarily when I'm taking a portrait, but if you're in really bright light and you want to shoot at aperture 1.2, so like the middle of the day sometimes, you may need to put an ND filter on this just to be able to shoot at that wide of an aperture during the day, even if you're shooting portraits. This lens has a cool feature. It has a button right here. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see that button right there? You can, inside the camera menu, you can assign different functions to this button. From the factory, this button is set to be a image review. So you can take your image, and if you're looking through the camera or you're looking through the viewfinder, especially with the digital cameras, and you can just press this button, it'll call up the last picture that you took, which is, I think, a neat function. But you can also set it to other things inside the menu of the camera. So let's talk about the focus. This was a very fast focusing, worked perfectly with the Nikon's iFocus. So here's some pictures of my niece. We were camping and I told her to just stand and jump around. Now she was posing for me a little bit, so I took this set of images, and this was taken over a few seconds. It wasn't like I just kept clicking the camera as she moved around. And as you can see, the camera kind of locked onto her eyes and her face is in focus for all of the images. I thought this was great. I had no problem with the camera hunting or the eye autofocus not being able to follow her head. She actually spun around a couple of times. As soon as her eye was back in focus, the camera locked right on. So that worked really well with this camera. I also just took some pictures, and when you're taking portraits, sometimes you're trying to get the light perfect, maybe using a softbox or a reflector. These were just how I think a lot of people might use this lens, where you're just taking pictures of your kids, family members. So here's my cousin John just sitting here. I thought it'd be interesting to see how a man, most of the time we take pictures, I use women in my photos sometimes when I'm showing this, but I thought it'd be different to show a man with like the ruggedness, and you see his beard hair, and it really does a nice job. Super sharp, super sharp. Then the other day we were in New York City with my daughter. I was bringing her back to school in Manhattan, so I took some pictures around the city. Just some quick ones. Here's a picture of a old mailbox with graffiti on it, very New York vibe to it. But as you can see, the background is very soft. The out of focused area, it looks really nice, and the details on the mailbox are pretty sharp. So was happy with that. Took another picture of this parking sign, same type of thing. Then I was walking down the street, and in this picture, I focused on the little flags that were hanging across the street, and you can see the people in front of the flags and behind the flags are out of focus. So you do get a depth of field that's very pleasing, and this was shot at 1.2. Now here is a picture I took of a close-up of a candle I had at my house. And I just want you to look, and when you're up close to a subject, look at how razor thin the focus is, that focus plane. I mean, there's just a small sliver of the middle of this image that's actually in focus. So if you want to get close to someone, really Like, I mean, you take a picture of someone's eye, their nose is going to be out of focus, and so are their ears. I mean, that's how shallow the depth of field can be with this lens if you want it to be. You don't have to use it that way. I mean, you can stop down. But for me, with a portrait lens like this, I feel like the 1.2 is why you're buying it. You can get a 1.8 lens, you know, if you wanted to, maybe save a couple of dollars. That brings me to the price. The price of this lens is really very reasonable for what it is. I mean, it's a real solid feeling, professional feeling lens. And it feels as good as any of my other lenses that I own. My Nikon lenses, Sigma, Tamrons, any of my other lenses that are pro lenses. This feels just as good or better in some cases. It's $549 right now. So to me, that's a very fair price for a lens of this quality with this shallow depth of field and the focusing. And the focusing is actually quiet. You don't hear anything. It has an STM focusing motor, so it's silent when it focuses. You don't even hear it. Here's a couple of more pictures just of my daughter that I took, and this one with like a really heavy crop. You can see her eyes are sharp and in focus. The camera does come with a lens hood, and it did come with a bag. So here's what it looks like with the lens hood on it. You know, it's a good size lens. It's not a small lens by any means. There's also a switch on it for manual and autofocus. Viltrox sent it to me. You know, I didn't have to pay for it. Just want to let you know that up front. But I would tell you the truth. I've received lenses that are not the best, and you know, I've said that in the past. And I have other lenses that I didn't really like, and I'll tell you about that. But this lens, I really can't find any fault. Okay, the one fault I found in it is that if you want to shoot this against a white wall, you're going to see some vignetting. That's it. That's really the only shortcoming I can find. And to be honest with you, when I shoot portraits, a lot of times I add a vignette on it. So it saves me a step in editing. So to me, that complete non-issue. So really happy with the lens. I definitely recommend it whether you shoot with a full frame or a crop sensor camera. You're going to get a more zoomed in, you know, field of view with a full frame camera than you would on the crop sensor. But I think that's great, actually, especially if you're buying it for portraits. This isn't really a walk-around lens. The field of view is kind of tight. So, you know, if you're, I would say something 85 or lower for a walk-around lens. A 24 to 70 to me is perfect. But you know, you could try it if you wanted to. If you like to shoot tight on things, Eric, who's the other half of this channel, he loves to. He's very detail oriented into shooting, and he likes to shoot in tight. And a lot of times he'll use a 135 and you know, really zoom in on the details of something. I tend to shoot a little wider with my photography, where I kind of get the big picture. So it really depends on what kind of photographer you are. But for portraits, this is perfect. You know, you just have to move yourself. You know, you want a little bit wider field of view, just back up. Okay, that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this review. Thanks for watching. And if you like camera reviews, photo tutorials, we have hundreds of them on the channel here. So you can check out anything you like. There's a bunch of playlists. And I'll see you in the next video.